Welcome to the Previously Rockhounding podcast, where we explore the world of rockhounding and lapidary from the ye olden days of the 1970s and 80s through the lens of vintage issues of Rock and Gem magazine.
This week we're looking at Rock and Gem magazine from September 1979.
If you're a new listener here, the way this works is I read the issue, Sarah reads the issue, we don't discuss it at all. We come together here on the podcast to share our thoughts about it.
Your thoughts?
Well, there was a couple of ads that really stood out in this. There was a ad for a pronouncing guide for selected minerals, rocks, and gems, which is the first time I've ever seen anything like this advertised. And it's also kind of interesting timing since I found an old vintage pronouncing like a trifold pamphlet. And that was, think about like a rock shop giving those away like at the register. I think that's how that was kind of put out there. This little book, it was for sale for $2.95 in 1979, which that's about $12 in today's money. I did try to find a copy of it, and I saw an expired eBay listing for it. So there was a copy of it was sold in November of 2022 because I was like, oh, that'd be kind of neat. Like to look into that. Like, I don't know. I've kind of looked into the international pronunciation alphabet some and just kind of like the whole idea behind it. And that sold on eBay for $4.95 with free shipping. I would have bought that for $4.95. I would have bought that. It's kind of big, actually. I think it was like 60 pages. So like that
1,300 names.
Yeah, I think that would have been interesting. I wonder how they figured out which 1,300 names to pick.
Yeah, I mean, I know the pronunciation guide that you found, the little brochure, has some pretty obvious ones in it, like agate, which I guess if you've never heard it, you would wonder how to pronounce it, but it seems pretty common to hear that being spoken aloud.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've seen like YouTube videos and people will say agate. So,
right, well, I guess.
you never know if like you might need something like that. I'm curious though, today we have 5,836 officially named minerals. And I don't know how many there were in 1979, but more than 1,300. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering how they decided which things to include as opposed to just being like, let's do them all.
Oh, yeah, good question.
I'll never know because I wasn't looking for this in November.
I did look for it. I did mention it last time. From last issue.
Oh.
And I also looked on eBay and I didn't find it, but I found that one sold listing. There was an ad for a guided tour. I guess it's California. I guess it's implied that it was in California, and it just said see meteors. And it was just text only, and it said historic Indian campsites, $25 a person, but it includes the tour, I guess, and 25 pounds of rocks. Of breccia, Indian picture rock, Death Valley travertine, etc.
Like you find them or they just give it to you?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah. Seems kind of a interesting concept to go visit. It was very kind of all over the place. Are you going to see meteors? Is it a stargazing tour? Is it a Indian campsite tour? Is it a rockhounding tour? I guess it's just everything.
Yeah. Why not? Why not have this kind of universal tour?
You really know the area. It's $25 a person.
That seems like a little much, but I mean, like, I don't know.
Plus it was like $3 every night for camping.
Oh. Yeah, that could add up at that point in time. Did you calculate what that is for inflation?
I didn't.
There was, so one thing that I've noticed, maybe starting around 1975, it seemed like we started to see ads for things that were not, I guess, like really related to rocks and gems. Like I think that kind of increased a little bit.
I mean, we started with 1975. I feel like it started in like the last couple years, like 77.
I've noticed an increase. And I kind of like the ads that have like nothing to do with the subject. There was an ad for a table in here, and it read "New, unique. The secret to its stability is underground. If you love to be outdoors, you'll love the little table, all-weather fiberglass top. Take it anywhere. Assemble, disassemble easily. Only $24.95." And that just had a drawing of a table with some rocks on it. Like I could imagine them taking that exact ad and putting it in an entirely different magazine and being like, "Do you like knitting?" And they like draw it with like a little ball and some knitting needles or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah,
What it was like a table on like a spike that you drive into the ground. And so it's like only supported in the middle, and depends. Sometimes when we have tent camped out places, we have a really hard time getting the tent spike, like the tent fly spikes in the ground. Can't imagine getting a table spike in the ground.
yeah, everywhere we go, it's just rock.
They should have known their audience better. I assume most people traveling who read Rock and Gem are going to places with rock.
Yes. I just think it's interesting to think about, like, you could see that exact ad in Rock and Gem and then,
Yeah.
I don't know, pick another, like, hobby, hunting magazine from that time, but, like, put a gun on it. Rest, like, I don't know.
Smart. There was also an ad for Mini Money, Strike It Rich, and it was miniature coin replicas, and it said they were shown actual size, which was like, it was like your smallest fingernail size, like really small. And it said jewelry sets available, so like the ones they were advertising weren't even, I don't even know what they were for. Why would you want tiny replica coins?
I have no idea. Was it replicas of U.S. money? Like, different?
Yeah. Maybe it was older money, but still, what are you going to do with like a quarter size, like a 1/4 size penny?
Well, I mean, there was, when we went through the whole centennial thing, there was like jewelry that you could put like a centennial coin in. Was coin jewelry like a thing at this time? Like, could you take your replica nickels and...
What's a jewelry? Yeah, maybe that's what it was for. It said jewelry something available, jewelry sets. So maybe they're like, oh, we'll sell you the things to make jewelry with our little coins, but they're so small.
Yeah, I don't know.
Seemed weird product.
Did you have any more ads?
Yes. There's an ad for a place called the Salt Mine. And in the ad, it had a little pencil drawing of a little building that you would assume is the mine, because it's called the Salt Mine, which I guess salt mine is probably not a good name for a rock business, but they sold Russian cubic zirconia and other things from the Middle East. And then when you looked up the address, it was in Fort Worth, Texas, and it's like a home in a subdivision, like on a cul-de-sac.
We've looked up a number of addresses.
It was somebody's house.
Yeah, but like back in 1979, like you couldn't Google an address and be like, what exactly is this?
I don't know. I just expected more from the salt mine, a little picture. And I was like, oh, I guess obviously it's not a real mine because they're selling things from Russia and Afghanistan, but I didn't expect just ranch home on a cul-de-sac from that. There was an ad selling a 100 stone garnet necklace, which it doesn't seem like the right audience.
No.
To sell jewelry to people who make jewelry.
I agree.
And it was $29.95.
That's kind of a lot.
It said it was a rare import of shimmering beauty, nearly 2 feet long. Yeah, I just thought it was weird to advertise jewelry in a magazine for people who make jewelry. I guess if you're not that advanced.
Or maybe you're looking to just have something to sell, like at, like resell, like you could like buy it wholesale. I don't know.
That's not what the ad was. It had like a drawing of a woman wearing.
Yeah, it was like a full page ad.
Yeah, it was a full page ad. Seems weird. There was some really big ads. There was a double page full color ad for Diamond Pacific.
Mm-hmm.
And then later there was a 3-page Loretone ad.
It was like the list of all of their,
all
the dealers that you could potentially find them at.
Well, they had one page that was full color, and it was their ad, and then you flipped it, and it was 2 whole pages of the list of dealers. So I don't know what Diamond Pacific took out an ad, and then Rock and Gem was like, hey, Loretone, they're taking out a 2-page full color ad, and they're like, oh, we better do that too.
If you recall, was it the last episode? There's an ad from Kingsley North where they like forgot their address on it. So there's like a little ad from Kingsley, and it was like kind of looked like a business card size ad, and they had in the corner like street, like address, city, state, and they didn't like fill it out. That wasn't here again. Like they still didn't fill it out.
They just buy ads for a certain amount of time. And
yeah, maybe they're like 6 issues, but you'd think like you'd be like, let's look at the ad that we bought.
Yeah, you would think.
And then you'd be like, oh, they forgot our phone number. It just says phone on it.
That's bad. Somebody from that company you would think, reads the magazine.
Yeah.
Maybe by the time the magazine's out, they're 2 issues ahead, so maybe.
Yeah, maybe there's nothing you can do about it.
There was one last ad. It was on the very last page from Fire Mountain Gems, and it said, introducing the first guarantee good for the 21st century and perhaps the 22nd. And they're just guaranteeing their saws or their tools for a lifetime guarantee. I looked on their website. They don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Fire Mountain Gems?
No.
It seemed like just they're like a reseller. They had a lot of different. I mean, I just looked at the tools, and they didn't seem like they make any tools anymore. It just seemed like they sell other people's products.
Lifetime warranties are kind of like a scam.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a 5-year warranty.
Yeah. Let's see. I think that was it for ads.
That's all I have.
Yeah.
Moving right along, we have some columns. We have the glory hole, which is the editor's column. He mentioned the Little Joe opal mine and that they were lowering their prices due to the current gasoline situation from $5 to $2 to help people afford to be able to come out, drive out, like a little extra gas or whatever. And
I thought that was surprising.
Yeah, I thought that was also surprising.
Was it just $5 to go there?
I think there's like they didn't really say, but I would assume it's the day fee.
Yeah.
And then like you're buying the material that you found on top of that. So like the day fee, they reduced it. I don't think many feed digs, at least not in the Western U.S., they don't charge a fee for access. It's like you pay for the material.
Yeah.
I know on the East Coast, like all those quartz crystal mines, like in Arkansas and stuff, I think they charge a day fee where it's like $40 to access the site, and then you pay for your material on top of that. So like even if you don't find anything, but it's kind of like shooting fish in a barrel. It's like a guarantee. But I don't understand that. Why not just charge a little bit more for the material? You'd probably, in the long run, make more money. And I don't know.
Is it per person? Or per like
What
group?
for
I
the?
don't know if you do a like day fee.
I think it's per person.
Yeah,
We've read some. I think it was the Sapphire Mine. They were like men
Yeah.
men are have this amount,
Right.
women this amount,
Right.
kids like nothing almost. I can't remember what the numbers were for that,
Yeah.
but
I
there
would
was.
think it'd be something like that because who's gonna pay for their kids who aren't actually gonna be finding much of
I think
anything?
at like the Ron Coleman mine or whatever, they have their like a slight reduction for children. There's like a under 16 price, which obviously if you're 10, you're not working the same as me.
Yeah.
So
Interesting. Yeah. It seems like just one or the other. Why have both?
yeah, I don't know.
Or like the entry fee or day fee goes towards your first whatever pounds. Yeah. Also in the glory hole, they were the editor was mentioning the new 2-letter state abbreviations that the Postal Service is trying to foist upon us. He did not like them, which I've noticed and brought up in some of the ads. They'll have odd abbreviations for states, and so now I know why, because the Postal Service hadn't foisted 2-letter abbreviations on everybody.
I don't think I've ever heard you say that word.
That's the exact word he used in the column.
I know. Yeah, well, I mean, what, like Oregon was ORE?
Yeah.
So, I mean, sure.
I could see how it would have been a rough transition. I mean, he mentions like, oh, what's Maine? Is it M-A? Is it M-E? Is it M-N?
I mean, we kind of just
accept
it now.
Since
like,
we didn't have to transition to him, we just like, it's M-E, obviously. But
for Oregon, they still have kind of latched onto it, and like you see stuff, and it's like people bringing back like not for the mailing of things, but like imagine a sign. You're like, I don't know, Pendleton, Oregon, but like ORE. Period. I've seen stuff like that where it's a little bit of like a vintage style throwback that they're doing. I wonder if other states are doing that. I don't know. They're not doing it here. What was Washington?
didn't we see W-N
Yeah.
or something? Something like that.
Well, it was like the Coast Guard had their own
Oh.
abbreviations for states, and
I looked it up and it said that they did that just because there was too many like letters on your address line, so they just
back when they delivered mostly handwritten letters.
Yeah, how were they supposed to know if you were like, oh, MN? How would the post office know? Maine, Minnesota,
The zip
other
code.
state with an M?
The zip code would be the
Yeah.
deciding factor there, I
Then
think.
you'd have to. Yeah. Yes. What's the next Frantic Fumbler?
This was a fantastic Frantic Fumbler. So it was all about desert survival. And he had the best advice ever. In the event that you find yourself stranded in the desert, what do you do, Sarah? Real quick. Pop quiz. What do you do?
Well, I already know the answer because I read the column. You pull out your scientifically calculated help mobile utility calling kit.
And it consists of a small magnifier and a jade cabochon mounted on a dop stick. The essential thing is that the cab have a poor to mediocre polish, preferably with that orange peel finish to it. And after a few minutes of being stranded, you take it out. You examine the polish on it, and with 3.5 minutes, at least 5 lappy dappies. I'm sorry, I have a hard time saying lappy dappies. Will appear from different directions, each with their own advice on the best way to polish this particular piece of jade.
That's funny.
I like that he's like making like a dig at people that are opinionated about jade.
Yes.
And later on, when we get into the articles, there's an article from the Frantic Fumbler, and he refers to himself as a lappy dappy.
I know, that's how I knew he wrote it, because I was like, wait, you just read this word in the column. Oh, it is his name.
I'm going to bring it back. I'm going to start calling people lappy dappies.
I don't know if it was ever a thing other than this column. I don't know if you can bring it back. You can maybe just start
Like it was never here in the it was never here in the first place. Yeah, I thought that was an amusing one.
Yeah, that was very clever. Just one. The last column is shop talk.
Yes. And this shop talk was all about lapidary blades. They talked about how you can get a dish in it, so like kind of basically bending your blade when you try to cut a rock that isn't properly clamped in the vise. And I think that happens to everybody. That happened to me. It was expensive because like a 14-inch diamond blades are not cheap, but I learned my lesson, and that'll never happen again now. You make that thing like ultra tight. One thing that caught my attention, though, with the shop talk is they talked about some of the larger saws having a meter on them to let you know when the blade's working too hard. I've never seen this before. I've never thought of this before. And I made a post on the YouTube channel. I'm like, what the heck? What the heck? Has anybody ever seen this, heard of this? Like a meter to see if the blade's working too hard. And the general consensus is that it was like an amp meter on it. So, I mean, essentially it's like showing you how loaded the motor is. Because we're talking about auto feed slab saws. So like a motor is spinning the blade and then a little tiny gear motor or the main motor with a bunch of pulleys is bringing a vise holding the rock into the blade. Well, if you're cutting a 1-inch rock on a 14-inch saw or a 5-inch rock on a 14-inch saw, the motor is going to be working differently. It's going to have a different load, stresses put on it. So as a meter to measure that, I'm like, that is so smart. I want to experiment with that myself and maybe add that. I think maybe back then it may have been a mechanical, like physical meter. I'm not really sure because I've never seen this before. But nowadays you can get a meter that I could run on the motor, like a couple of bucks. You can get them really, really cheap, like little motors or meters. I might try that. I think it'd be kind of interesting to see. Let's say like you take two rocks, different substances, like piece of serpentine, piece of jasper, piece of marble, quartz, whatever, and see how much stress it puts on the motor. So I thought that was kind of neat. I've never ever seen or heard of that before.
Time to make that happen yourself, since nobody else had really seen or heard of it before either.
Moving right along to the articles. The first article is how to make rubber molds. It's an advanced technique for repeated success. And this was an article about using a rubber mold making press where you would take a setting, like, so let's say you made something out of silver and you wanted to duplicate it a whole bunch of times. You can put vulcanizing rubber in a press. Kind of looks like a bench vise almost, right? Like, and take your metal setting like that you'd put a cabochon in and press it. So now you have this vulcanized rubber impression that you can then come in later and dump wax into so that you can have repeated wax castings for the lost wax casting process. So it was just like a article being like, this is a thing that exists.
Well, I feel like we haven't had one of these types of articles in a while where it's the very first article and it's kind of a how-to showcasing a product that got mailed to them. I haven't noticed it the past couple issues. But it's always kind of mediocre.
Yeah, you're just like, okay. I mean,
yeah, they're just like this. It's the ultimate ad, the first article, and they're just like, this product exists.
Yeah, it's definitely just an expression of the existence of this being a thing.
Because they don't actually, did they actually make anything? Sometimes they just walk you through the steps and they use the manufacturer's photos.
Yeah, they didn't, I don't think they made any. Well, I mean, I don't know. They were just they had example photos where it's like 8 photos with like the steps, which maybe
But they're not walking you through how to do a project. They're just saying, like, theoretically explaining how you would
True.
use the machine.
true. So there's not a whole lot to say
Yeah.
on that, but it does make sense that like if you're making, I don't know, 15 rings that you want them all to be identical, that would make sense. So you'd have to have a way of making duplicating your wax molds. So next up we have a field trip. Castle Butte. It's one of the best collecting areas in Southern California. So this is it's an article about rockhounding in Southern California at Castle Butte, which is between Tehachapi and Barstow. So that's like the Southern California it's the desert. Is what it is. And that's still a well-known area today. And it's just like, I think that almost everybody just goes there for agates, jasper, and petrified wood, and that's kind of what they were going for in this. But they did also find like there's fossils down there, but I don't think fossils are really the thing they go for today. Everybody's like agates, 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 and it's still very much so a producing locality. I kind of like these style of field trip articles where it's just like this kind of matter of fact, like almost like a verbatim telling of like somebody talking about this location with a friend, where they're like, yeah, you can go out here, this is kind of where it's at, this is what you find, and it's just a straight up like, this is a thing.
I guess I didn't find it to be super interesting because maybe it was very just fact based, and it didn't. Some of the other field trips will talk about the history of the area or the formation of the rock or a crazy trip out there that they had, and this one was just like, yeah, you go out here, you find all the stuff, it's everywhere.
It had a little bit, it kind of reminded me of some of the modern day guidebooks. Like imagine like you lived in Southern California, like you lived in Barstow and you got the Rock and Gem and you're like, oh yeah, that seems like a great area to go visit. Yeah. And it's just kind of like that.
Yeah.
So
it would also just seem like a very easy area to rockhound. So it's not like go here, turn here, hit the cliffs, and then get to the bottom, and then dig 6. Like it's just like, there's all over. Walk around, pick stuff up.
Yeah, you can dig if you want.
There, it said in there, if you load up with too much, you might not have an excuse to return.
Mm-hmm. They didn't mention if they had a desert survival kit set up. There's no mention of poor Jade.
Hopefully they did make it out because they wrote the article.
The next article is soapstone carvings. It's easy to carve and takes a timeless finish. So
I thought this was a good article. It had a little history on soapstone and its uses. It had a little explanation of how it forms. It had a little bit of how to work the material. I thought it was a good explanation of the topic and not overly in-depth like sometimes the articles are.
I'm not sure how true any of the stuff in the article was. Okay, so soapstone, it's the common name for talc. Okay, so we're talking about talc.
Sure.
And yeah, they did describe like all these different ways it could be used and like heat treated and a lot of stuff. They said that talc is used in peanut polishing and salami dusting. And I looked far and wide for what peanut polishing is, and I haven't the slightest clue. And salami dusting, like on a salami, it's like the white stuff. I don't believe that's talc, or at least they don't use it today. It's like,
What is it?
I can't remember the name of it. It's not talc. So I'm like, wait, okay. So then I kind of started to question some more things with this article. So they talked about some of the different ways you would finish soapstone. So you carved something, you carved that little bear out of soapstone, and they said you could finish it by rubbing linseed oil on it or car wax. And this doesn't seem like a thing that anybody has ever done or mentioned anywhere else. And it does kind of call into question all the other facts in the article that I didn't actually research. I'm like, wait a second.
I don't know. Would linseed oil or car wax not work?
I mean, I guess in theory,
Maybe they would work, but not to different degrees. Maybe one would look better than the other, or neither would measure up to actually polishing.
I think it definitely isn't. Those aren't the common things that somebody would do today, 2023. So it's a little hard to really know, but I don't know. I mean,
If there was one thing, they kept mentioning the steatite or steatite soapstone of Southern Oregon. And then at the end, it was like, oh, this was actually a little plug for them. Here's their address.
Yes.
Here's their info. So,
I do like soapstone.
yeah.
This past summer 2022, we collected some soapstone here in Washington State, and it was a lot of fun. Like to go out and like you cut it with a handsaw because it's so soft, and I polished up some of it, and it looks beautiful. It looks like it looks really cool. Like so, I mean, if I know of other localities with soapstone, I would obviously go get some. I think it has a little bit more uses almost than like just the carving.
Yeah.
But obviously, next time our peanuts are dull, we could shine them up.
Also, the address they gave for the steatite soapstone of Southern Oregon, it's like Steatite of Southern Oregon Incorporated. It was like a house, like residential.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
I thought it would be a mine or something. It was just a house.
Yeah, how things change.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I would never in a million years publish my address in Rock and Gem magazine if I was selling something. Like, no, you'd get like a P.O. box.
Yeah.
Like, you have like I don't know, a light industrial, like, business park space or something.
Yeah.
Or you're the physical mine and like have a mailbox there. I don't know. Moving right along, the next article. Master of Miniatures. Frank T's many talents include endless patience. So it was kind of a rather short artist profile. It was just a single page on him. And he makes tiny silver figures
Yeah.
out of, like, he casts them. And I thought it was they didn't say a whole lot in it. It was just kind of like, this is a thing that this guy does. And I felt like they could have probably done more. There's only like two or three blurry photos of what he had done. And they made it sound like he's like, like a mentor to people and has done all this great stuff. But then they put in like the most awful photos.
Yeah, it didn't look super impressive, and I don't know. It wasn't rocks and it wasn't gems, and it was.
Let me ask you this: is silversmithing? Is it lapidary?
It's kind of its own separate thing.
I look at silversmithing the same way I would look at woodworking. I could go and make something out of wood and put stones on it, it's somewhat similar, but they really focus a lot on the silversmithing and like the jewelry making. And
I mean, I guess it is jewel. You're making, but he wasn't even making jewelry.
Yeah,
he
he's
was
just
making
like-
little figurines.
Yeah.
and he put them on rocks, and I think they tried to tie that kind of into like, see, rocks. He mounts it on a rock.
it kind of reminded me a little bit, but I don't know. It's kind of some similarities. If you see like amethyst geode, and they like take like a little pewter casted miner and like put him in it, so he's like like make a little scene out of like silver or casted pewter little guys mining and put them on rocks, like as like a tourist thing. That's a thing that people do. It kind of gave me that type of vibe, and I'm like, I don't know.
I mean, it wasn't even that though. It was just like a little thing mounted on the rock. It wasn't like, oh, it's funny, the little miners are interacting with this geode. No, it's just...
Well, we will make up for it because we have another artist profile, Carlos White Eagle. He combines many crafts into complex artistry. So this one was significantly better.
Yeah.
And the profile of Carlos, he's a very accomplished painter, sculptor, jeweler. He had clients like Dwight Eisenhower, Frank Sinatra, Wayne Newton. And from what I can tell, all of his art, everything it was all like Native American art. And the article had like a full page picture, which you can go check out, currently rockhounding.com/podcast, of a bolo tie he made. And I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. It's like the tie part, like the metal.
It was very complex.
It was like a Native American that appears to be in like ceremonial dress. And it was all like silver with like pearl, coral, turquoise inlay. Like it looked like really, really amazing. Like you should go check it out. And then I read the size of it. And the size of this bolo tie is 11 inches by 7 inches. Really? 11 inches tall.
Did they mean centimeters?
11 inches tall is what they said.
That's not how big jewelry is.
That's like a dinner plate. That's like your That's like your gangster bling. Like that's a ginormous.
Does it still count as a bolo tie if it's that big? Just because you like put it on a string and you could wear it around your neck doesn't make it a necklace. Is a clock a necklace because that one guy wore one? I mean,
was it Flava Flav?
Yes, that
guy. Yeah. So I think a 7-inch or an 11-inch tall, 7-inch wide.
That's like a piece of paper.
Yeah.
That's very large.
It was very large.
That's why it was so complex.
Yeah.
It wasn't life size in the magazine.
No. There's nobody wearing. I wish they had a picture of somebody wearing this. That would have been would have been funny. But yeah, I don't know. I thought it was pretty good.
And his is what they put on the cover, his art.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very cool.
Next one, field trip, red horn coral. You can dig your own in Utah. ... If you can find hailstone first.
I guess okay, so it's technically a field trip, but I feel like there's field trips written by like normal people that get submitted to Rock and Gem, and then I think this was a writer for Rock and Gem.
I thought it was a good article.
Yeah. So it's a little on the more technical side.
Yeah.
A little bit. So it described kind of in depth the area's geology, which is just outside of Francis, Utah. So that's like to the west of Salt Lake City. And there's this big area where you can get what they call red horn coral. And red horn coral, it's pretty much agatized coral, agatized castings. So like the core, that area is once underwater, And there is coral there. Later on, silicates moved in, and you get coral-shaped red agates.
I thought it was a good article. He kind of talked about the backstory of finding out about the spot. Obviously, the little subtitle of you can get it if you can find hailstone first, because somebody told him to go to the town of Hailstone and he didn't know where that was, and they said, oh, it's right by Francis, and then he had to find out where that was. And
ignorant Californian.
Yeah.
He doesn't know tiny towns in middle of nowhere Utah.
yeah. But he did go to somebody's claim, so I mean it wasn't really, but they said you could go out there, dig yourself. Told you how to work the area, what layer to get in, so it was very informative.
Apparently that mine owner had like people come and dig and put some of the material aside, and he'd give them 10% of the sale of it.
Huh.
I think the red horn coral, I know it was very popular in the 80s. I think it really kind of like blew up some. So maybe in future episodes we should keep our eyes peeled for it. You can still go out there today and go rockhounding for it, although it is a ginormous amount of work. It's kind of like in this like limestoney mass that's very difficult to just go and like prospect by hand. There are digs and stuff out there, but like heavy equipment on a legal mine makes a lot more sense, because they can like break it up, and then there's like giant blocks, and you can kind of just smash them up and like get the stuff out that, or I mean, it does naturally erode out. And there are some places that not far from Francis that surface picking is like a thing that people go and do, like go and check the washes and stuff. And it does look really nice. I mean, it's kind of a cross between like a blood red jasper to a more carnelian orange in colors, which I mean, if we were over there, I'd go check that out.
Yeah.
Sounds cool.
They mentioned it was something that there was like a teacher who was out and somebody told them about it, and somebody told somebody else, so it was really had been like recently discovered. So I think you're probably right about it'll be a craze that we will probably see again.
So the next article, care of mineral species, the care of mineral specimens. Once they're yours, it's up to you to protect them. I was excited to read this article, and just based on the name, I was like, this is going to be good. I like minerals. Like, what are they going to say? And I was disappointed.
Yeah, it did not deliver.
So it was just like story after story, like anecdotes of people like breaking rocks and breaking specimens. Like, oh, they went and collected fossils and threw their sledgehammers on top of it for their drive home. Came home and they were dust. Like that type of like, okay, and then what? Like everybody on the train stood up and clapped. Like this kind of like made up. Like, was any of it real? Like some of it, talking about his friend that they're at Topaz Mountain, and he was just like stabbing at crystals with a screwdriver, and just like all these things to illustrate what not to do, but they didn't really tell you what to do to like not break and destroy stuff as you try to get it home.
Yeah, it was very basic in the advice, and I mean, they talked about how fossils are formed, how crystals are formed, advice for collecting, the tools you should have, and not as much on protecting your mineral specimens as I had expected. I'm
going to make up for it right here. It's real simple. You take a roll of aluminum foil that you buy on Amazon because it's way, way cheap on Amazon. You get ginormous rolls. And anytime you find something you want to actually make sure it makes it home, you you crumple up tinfoil around it. And that way, if your rock or specimen that you collected is wet, it doesn't make newspaper all soggy and gross. If you really want to protect something, it's like a fibrous zeolite, you make a little bowl out of tinfoil and put it in it, and then make a lid out of tinfoil, and then you pack it into a bin, a hard plastic bin. When you drive home, it's definitely going to make it. Tinfoil is the only way to pack minerals. All the people are like, newspaper and paper towels and this and that. I'm like, no, tinfoil. Just burn through it.
What if it was your mineral got scratched by the tinfoil?
I don't think it will. But yeah, tinfoil is the way to do it. I should start writing my own.
Yeah.
I should write my own article, tinfoil. You know what would be interesting would be to put it to the test and take some minerals and wrap them up in tinfoil and how protected are they? Can we throw them off of a building? Can we forget the egg drop? Let's do the mineral drop.
Yeah, get a fossil.
Yeah.
See if it breaks. We got fossils.
Yeah, but people wrap them up in paper towels, wrap them up in newspaper, and then make the foil dome ball, and go to a parking garage and we start chucking fossils off.
Yeah, or maybe you just put it in a bin and you shake the bin a little bit. You put the bin on a trampoline and then you jump a few times.
That might be more practical.
I mean, you could get to a parking garage easier than getting to a trampoline. So.
Go knock on the neighbor's door. Yeah. Hey, can I borrow your trampoline real quick?
Yeah, that wasn't the best article.
Well, I made up for it with my awesome tin foil advice. Actually, I take that back. Aluminum foil advice. Oh. We have another artist profile, which I feel maybe there are more artist profiles in here than some past ones. Super silversmith. The only question is, how does he do it? The answer, silver. Oh. I editorialized that last part. So yeah, it's a artist profile of Bob Kopler, sure, who is he seems like a very accomplished silversmith. And he does a lot with buckles, kind of these landscape scenes, Native American inspired landscape. I'm picturing in your head a belt buckle with a teepee on it. And I have a hard time having any type of real connection with Native American stuff. I mean, I'm not Native American. Sarah's not Native American. And it really, I know we're looking.
It's fine. I mean,
we're looking at stuff from the 70s.
Yeah.
And there was definitely it was trendy.
Yeah.
It was very trendy to have Native American style stuff and make Native American style stuff. And it's just not anymore.
Yeah.
So I don't really know, and we're not silversmiths, so it doesn't connect. It's a miss.
I think they should do a little more theme to their magazine issues. We read one, it was the gold issue, didn't we? They should have more and be the silversmith issue, the whatever, and then you know what you're getting into. Or if you really like silversmithing, you know what you're getting into, and you're oh, I'm definitely going to buy that issue of Rock and Gem because it's the thing I like. I mean, this one on the cover, it says Super Silversmith, which, okay. No, and what is that even? They got to work on their titles.
Yeah,
I mean, I think if they would have themed it, maybe that would have been nice.
Yeah. Yeah, and then if there's a silversmith issue, we could just skip it.
Yeah, maybe they know everyone would skip it.
So, this is an article that I really like. This is a two-parter. So this is going to be part 1, and then in the next previously Rockhounding podcast, we'll be reading part 2. Cabbing with diamonds. You'll lose your heart to diamond if you don't do your spade work and join the club. And this is a article by Mark Holan, who is the Frantic Fumbler. And I thought it was really interesting because we're at this kind of critical point in lapidary where everybody is using silicon carbide, hard wheels, corundum wheels to do grinding, shaping of stones. Or not everybody, but the majority, okay? And we're just now hitting this kind of like point where people are transitioning to working with diamonds. And today, nobody's doing it. Like, nobody's using silicon carbide hard wheels anymore. I mean, for a number of reasons. First off, I mean, obviously, diamonds have gotten very cheap. But at this time, we see a lot of ads for diamond products from like Nova Wheels, from Diamond Pacific, different laps, all this stuff. Like, they're trying to push like diamonds being the tool of choice. And it's not, I think a lot of people are just like, no, silicon carbide. So this article, I thought, is very interesting because of that. And he really goes on to kind of explain the basics of how diamonds work for grinding, because he wants to figure it out for himself. That's like the premise here. Like, is it good to transition to diamonds? And one thing he said, which I thought was kind of amusing. Synthetic diamonds are identical to naturals in their fundamental properties, but they differ in impurities, size, shape, and because of this and the unrealistic economics of synthesizing large crystals, it's unlikely that synthetic diamonds will ever compete in the gem market. And that's interesting because today, lab-grown diamonds are wildly popular in jewelry, and they're so good that you need really advanced equipment to even detect them. Like, those like little dinky diamond testers, they basically won't work on like a good lab diamond. They'll work on like cubic zirconium, but like a true lab diamond is just as good, and you can get like a VS1, like super high quality diamonds now. But as far as it relates to this and like the use of lapidary, they're really looking at it as like a good potential way to transition, but the economics of it made it so that it's very expensive. And we've seen that in some of the ads for it. He then went on to kind of describe a lot of the different diamond products that are out there. And it did get a little like ad-ish because they're like Nova Pacific or Nova Wheels and these laps and this.
But if he mentions multiple products, he's just mentioning what's out there. He's not mentioning one.
So I'm kind of hoping in the next issue that he talks about some comparison, like, when you're doing silicon carbide wheels, you need like a lot more water and like some of the pros and cons of it. It's funny because like he's kind of testing diamond wheels, and I've thought about I'm building my Lortone Arbor, and you can get silicon carbide wheels for so cheap. Like people will throw them out, right? Like, I know like Lapidary Dave has like ginormous stacks of silicon carbide wheels sitting around. Like lots of people have these, or lots of people, like people with old shops or whatever. I would love to do some testing with them. Like this is how lapidary was done. Like, I guess probably primarily up until like 19 72-ish is when like the first kind of diamond products came about. And here we are today, 2023, and nobody's using silicon carbide outside of like the Richardson's high-speed sander with like its silicon carbide flat discs and some stuff like that. But like nobody's making cabs on these. Interesting. The one thing that silicon carbide wheels offer, which I maybe we're getting a little too into the weeds here, is often when you think of like a cab machine, you think of those wheels. They're all flat, right? You know, it's just like a round wheel. Mm-hmm. The silicon carbide, you can dress them to be a shape. So now imagine it's concaved, like a concaved wheel. So like you could push a rock into it and it'll make that concaved shape for you. Huh. So you can do interesting stuff like that. Diamonds.
Yeah.
What did you think, Sarah? What about diamonds?
I mean, I don't really know any of the history or what's currently used, so I didn't really have much context or knowledge for this article.
Well, I'm looking forward to the next one. Hopefully the Frantic Fumbler rarely disappoints.
Yes.
Our last article is a field trip. Turquoise in the streets in Cripple Creek. All you have to do is bend down and pick it up. The basics of this article. There's a town called Cripple Creek, which is in Colorado. And the streets in the town were made with the fill dirt from a turquoise mine in the area. So you have, like, I assume just low quality turquoise bits in the roads. And I mean, probably some bigger stuff. I think they alluded to that in the article. But yeah, that's kind of like the basics of it. I mean,
just a little town you can go visit. He says, you know, the roads are unpaved due to city charter. So go on any side roads, and there's a photo of him bending down in a street to pick something up, and he's like in front of people's houses. Like, it's not like a business, it's just like a little town. And I mean, I don't think he's getting much. He recommended a medicine bottle to put him in, like your little orange thing, which is not very much. I looked up the town, and you can't do this anymore. They did pave the streets.
Yeah.
So they must have changed the city charter at some point. They're like, I guess what they're going for, like a historical feel. That's why
it was like a rustic. They wanted to maintain a rustic appearance.
Yeah, they're like, no, let's pave it. Who cares? And I thought it was interesting that he didn't mention the giant mine right outside of town.
Yeah.
It was there in the 70s, right? Because I looked it up and it said they worked it in the 90s, but it was not started in the 90s.
No.
Why didn't he mention that there's a it's like one of those like huge giant holes in the ground.
Yeah.
That you see from space right on this edge of town. Like, he didn't mention it at all. He was like, oh, you can go to the Imperial Hotel. They offer gay 90s melodrama. But he wasn't like, there's a gigantic mine right outside of town. It's really, really, really big. I guess you couldn't go to it, but...
Yeah, I mean, that's where the fill dirt for the roads came from.
I thought it was also interesting that you'd be like, 90s melodrama, and you're like, oh, 1890s. Guess that's a thing that's going to happen in 25 years. We'll be like, oh, 40s, the war years. And then we're like, no, 2040s.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's all I have for this issue of Rock and Gem. Next time, we'll be reading Rock and Gem magazine from October 1979. Government and the Rockhound closing off the backcountry. Cabbing with diamonds. Are fire agates really opal? Sizing rings. Field trips.
Sound pretty good. I don't want to get my hopes up, but that sounds very intriguing.
Get your hopes up! Next time!